meet their own needs and the needs of their investors. But social entrepreneurs are looking at a broader world, their community, the groups they serve, how they will make the world a better place. And social entrepreneurs and the people who fund them try to measure the impact that their social ventures achieve. So what are the kinds of impacts that social ventures have? They improve the health of people who receive medical care from them. They improve the lives of people who are educated in their classrooms. And measuring impact is a very difficult thing to do in social ventures, because measuring what entrepreneurs do, just making money, it's easy to measure it. Return on investment, that's the measure we're going to look at. But with social ventures, it's much broader, much harder to define, much harder to research. Okay, so what's the foundation of all of this? Is creating something, usually from scratch, taking risk and taking the responsibility for it, and wanting to achieve growth. Do businesses want to achieve growth? So growth is like the #1 thing businesses want to achieve. Why? Because they can't increase value without creating growth. So does that apply to social ventures? It does. In the many social ventures I've known, the ones I've been involved with, all of them want to expand their reach. They want to have more impact. The people who fund them want to be able to say, we created a new model that other people then followed, so our impact goes far beyond just this venture. So, for example, there are many ventures, many social ventures that provide food to people who are underserved, and many of them have been replicated all over the country. So the people who funded the first ones say, look how great we are. We created something and everybody followed it, and now we created huge impact with our investment. So that's where growth and innovation comes in. And then the idea that this growth and innovation is going to be replicated is really central to what social entrepreneurs and their funders look to do. Okay, so can you be an entrepreneur? Can you be a social entrepreneur within a larger organization? So we think about entrepreneurship as being entrepreneurial within a large organization. Lots of businesses will tell people who get hired into executive roles, we want everybody here to be entrepreneurial. We want you to take initiative. We want you to develop new models. We want you to reach new markets for us. That's great, and we want you to create growth for our company. Does that apply to social ventures? Does that apply to social entrepreneurs? The answer is yes. So look at some of these organizations that have grown to be very large social ventures. Examples of this, AARP. AARP started because a woman who was a retired school teacher decided that other retired school teachers would be good people to sell insurance to because they were very good risks. And from there, she built it into a worldwide organization that does a lot of things. It has a for-profit side, it has a non-profit side, it lobbies for the interests of retired people, and each of these divisions is headed by somebody who thinks of themselves and is rewarded for being entrepreneurial. Another organization I think of is sort of kind of shocking in a way, but the Girl Scouts. What does the Girl Scouts do that's so entrepreneurial? Cookies. That's how they support the organization, is selling billions of cookies. This started with one Girl Scout troop in Oklahoma that had a cookie sale that was really successful, and then got replicated by other troops, and then the parent organization took it on. Now they own a factory that bakes cookies, 12 months a year, and this is a gigantic operation. It's allowed them to expand their mission. So they do other kinds of training, other kinds of programs. It's not just Girl Scout troops anymore. It's really helping girls mature and move into the modern world. So, anyway, these are examples of organizations started with an idea, was innovative, was replicated within their organization. The people who work there consider themselves to be very entrepreneurial. So what kinds of things do they do? So, proactive problem solving, just like business people, calculated risk taking, just like business people. So let's just compare for a minute entrepreneurship and intrapreneurship. So entrepreneurship we think of as a new venture created from scratch, where the entrepreneur owns the venture and takes financial risk, where the entrepreneur has independent decision-making autonomy and is market-driven external opportunities. So they're looking for opportunities outside of what they're currently doing as ways to expand. So intrapreneurship, done within a large existing organization. This is innovation within the existing organization. The organization is sharing the risk for this venture. It has to work within an existing corporate structure. In other words, there's some reporting that's going up within the structure. And there has to be internal improvement and growth opportunities that are identified and exploited. So both approaches require the same fundamental entrepreneurial mindset to succeed. So being an intrapreneur is just taking these skills, this mindset, this ambition, moving it within a large organization and exploiting it. Okay, so what motivates people to start ventures, especially social ventures? So I've identified 7 here that I think are the main motivations for social entrepreneurs. So one is, if they identify an industry or an industry or a societal program that's got too much concentration, they want to break up that system, right? We believe that what's the problem with monopolies? They charge too much and they deliver bad services. So sometimes people see healthcare in certain parts of the country where there's just a huge amount of concentration. Even New York is sort of moving in that direction. So what do people do as social ventures? What do they even do as business ventures? They create something to break into that, to find a niche that they can do a better job with and to start serving it. So, you're now beginning to see this in New York. It's like, go down main business streets and you see City MD or other new ventures that are trying to break in and improve service to people. Now, those are privately owned ventures, but there are also public nonprofit ventures that do the same thing. Hani mentioned that I was the president of the Hemophilia Association of New York for a long time. I'm still on the board. These are patients, our patients who belong to this organization use one of the most expensive drugs there is. These are clotting factor drugs. And many of these patients use $1 million a year of these drugs. Well, who makes money from this system? Is the pharmaceutical companies, the distributors of these pharmaceuticals. And this was not working for our patients. And so we organized a new entity as a nonprofit to purchase these drugs and sell them directly to patients and to their insurance companies, and to exploit some openings in the law that allowed us to purchase these drugs at a discount. We've now done this for more than 20 years, and we sell more than $100 million a year in these drugs to patients. How much do we save them? We figure we save them about $50 million a year, because we do this through a nonprofit that exists fundamentally to serve the patient's needs rather than to be a business entity. So you see this with pharmaceuticals, this high concentration, drugs that the laws that, and I'm going to blame Congress, the laws that Congress has passed over many years makes it possible to gain monopoly status for many drugs and many categories of drugs. Externalities. Externalities means that you're impacted by something, but you don't have a direct financial relationship with them. So, for example, an externality is pollution. So you don't have any direct financial relationship with the factory in your town that pollutes the air, but nonetheless, you have a financial impact. It affects your care, it affects your health, it affects the value of your house, it affects the reputation of the town. All of these things have financial impacts for you. So organizations get formed to combat these externalities. We see them with ones that are organized to protect wildlife, to reduce pollution, the creation of parks is an example of this. So people feel that there's something going on that's impacting them, making their lives worse. They create an organization that maybe lobbies, that maybe creates a separate system, and they move ahead with a social venture. Market uncertainties. So here, the stock market, I think, was down like 1,000 points today, right? This is market uncertainty. So market uncertainties affect people in many ways. So social ventures can address this issue of market uncertainties in housing, in health, in investment. There are so many organizations, nonprofit organizations that have been established to help young people, your age and younger, to understand the financial system, so that they can cope with the market uncertainties that the stock market from time to time, like today, inflicts on them. Lack of consumer information. So people familiar with Consumer Reports magazine, right? It's existed for many years. It's a nonprofit, it's a social venture. It was set up because people have to make purchasing decisions, but the information on which to make those decisions is not clear, is not complete. And so they organized this organization, 70, 80 years ago, and it's thrived ever since as a nonprofit, as a social venture, to remedy that lack of consumer information that exists with the major purchases that consumers have to make. Public ownership is another reason that people get motivated. So I'll give you an example here. So public ownership is something like, Yellowstone National Park, right? So I don't know, Yellowstone National Park is a place of unique beauty, and people said, President Teddy Roosevelt actually said that these places are so beautiful, so unique, they should not be owned privately, they should really be they're owned by the public. Everybody should own them. So the government owns the public national park system of, network of spectacular places. Makes sense, right? Anyway, there's like a constant battle in New York going on about bike lanes. This is a similar value. So who owns the streets? No one owns the streets, they're publicly owned. So now we have this issue of how do we allocate the space? How do we enforce the use of this space? And so you get organizations, that exist. Transportation Alternatives is a nonprofit that exists to lobby on behalf of bike riders. And then you get organizations that go and testify against them to say that, bike riders are taking up too much space and they're not following the rules. And so you've got this battle of nonprofits going on about this issue of public ownership. Who owns the streets, how are they allocated, and who uses them? Excess competition. So it's hard, as capitalists, which I am, and I think probably many of you are, excess competition seems like it shouldn't be possible. Competition is good, so more competition should be better. But in reality, some things get out of control with competition. One of them that always surprised me was medical schools. So can you have too many doctors? Well, apparently the government believes that you can. And that if you had too many doctors, you would have too many doctors prescribing unnecessary drugs or driving up costs. And so the government wants to limit the number of medical schools and the number of people who they graduate. So what does that trigger? That triggers nonprofits. The largest medical school that supplies doctors in the United States is offshore, St. George's Medical School. And it's really a nonprofit answer to this issue. Good for them. So anyway, and my last issue is pluralism. This is public input is desired. So we create organizations, nonprofits, that lobby government entities to inform the government as to how they should behave. Okay, let's move ahead. So I believe that entrepreneurs, good ones, have certain reflexes that have been built into them, sometimes because it's just how they are, sometimes from experience, that defines them as successful entrepreneurs. So this is innovation and creativity, being adaptable and resilient, putting up with things that are falling apart and then somehow coming back from them. Resource optimization and risk management. No organization has as many resources as it would like, and smart entrepreneurs know how to make the most of what they have. Strategic partnerships and data-driven decisions. Entrepreneurs need to reach out beyond themselves and their close network to create success. Who are they reaching out to? They're reaching out to other sources of revenue. They're reaching out to customers. They're reaching out to partners. And this is something that entrepreneurs are good at, making these alliances, getting the resources they need, and growing their businesses. And lastly, continuous learning. No more important than today. The world changes so quickly. All of this new technology comes along. The organizations that will be successful are the ones that know how to apply this technology. I'm part of a group that's doing a study of senior centers in New York. Well, I don't know, there are more than 200 senior centers in New York. There's more than, that's in New York City. There are more than 300 in New York State. And the question that got asked to us by a funder, by the way, is, are these people taking advantage of new technology? And if they're not, how should they? Well, these are all nonprofits. These are all organizations that are looking to create more services. These are all organizations that are looking to improve what they do and to further the skills of the people who work there now. Remains to be seen. Our initial response to speaking to people is most of them have not used AI in the least. Has to be an opportunity missed, and sooner or later they're all going to have to use these tools. Just like they will come to use other computer innovations. So social entrepreneurs have a triple bottom line. They're making money because they need to pay the bills. They have social goals that they're looking to achieve that are narrow to their organization, and they have broader environmental goals. They want to improve the world. They're looking to improve the world. Okay, so I'll get these slides going in the right direction sooner or later. So in practice, social entrepreneurs are mission-driven. They're pursuing new opportunities. They're continuously improving and changing. They're being resourceful. They're being accountable to their constituents and to society in general. And they're measuring social impact and sharing those findings publicly. So, some descriptions of entrepreneurial leaders. They have these reflexes. They're rapidly solving problems. They're nimble and agile in the world, and they have a long-term vision of what they're trying to do. Are educational institutions social ventures? Yep. They're nonprofits, right? 99% of them are nonprofits. Do they have a social mission? Education, furtherance of knowledge, right? So they're social ventures, and the good leaders of them are dealing with constant change in their environment. They're looking to get more resources, and they're creating and selling their long-term vision. Okay, so let's see. So, summary of key issues and descriptions. I'm gonna skip this, and I'm gonna go here. So, putting this into practice. So, organizational structures. 501c3 is the most common form of social ventures. By the way, 501c3s were created when Congress passed the first income tax. I believe it's 1917. And they added a paragraph to the law that said, if you're working for a social purpose, you can be organized under this section of the Internal Revenue Code, 501c3, and the benefit is people who give you money get to deduct it on their taxes. That's the reason 120 years later, we have millions of 501c3s, and when they ask you for money, they tell you you can give the money and it's a tax deduction. We have lately B Corps and C Corps, which are organized by states, which give certain tax benefits to nonprofits. Some states have been further ahead in this than others. Some are community organizations without any formal structure. Some are social enterprises, community groups, largely community groups. And where does the money come from? So philanthropy and donations, who are looking to get a tax deduction, but mostly to support the mission of the organization. Many of them have earned income initiatives. I'm a big supporter of this. This Clotting Factor sales organization is an example of a earned income strategy. Selling Girl Scout cookies is a example of a earned income initiative. Government grants, many nonprofits get grants, universities, at least they used to, and many take multiple approaches to all of this. So where are they, and where are the main areas for social ventures? Healthcare, free clinics like Planned Parenthood, dealing with hunger like God's Love We Deliver, Meals on Wheels. These are not just valuable, important organizations that make a big impact. These are organizations that many other organizations have replicated. Training and education, obviously colleges and universities, but something like the Khan Academy, which is just, his idea was let's get education out to people in the cheapest, most efficient way possible. It's a great thing. So is anybody motivated to be a social entrepreneur? So I came here today thinking maybe I can create some social entrepreneurs here, introduce you to a very challenging, complex, but important area that all of you can do, that you can all find areas that motivate you, are important to you, and you can start to serve people and take the benefits of that. And all the things I've done, I have to say, as an example of this, of all the things I've done, I've been on the board of the Organ Donor Network in New York for 6 years. I've obviously been involved with educational institutions, but relatively early on in my tenure as the head of the Hemophilia Association of New York, the AIDS epidemic hit. And no group of patients in the United States were more affected by AIDS than this group, because these people received blood transfusions and blood products as part of their treatment. And 85% plus of our patients, our members who had the disease, contracted HIV. And this was an unbelievable strain on the organization, personally, because many members of the organization had AIDS. There was no treatment for it. Many of them were young. Many of them died. And dealing with them and their families and providing services to them during this difficult time, when I look back, I say, well, what did you do that you feel good about? I feel better about that than anything else I ever did. And that's the power of social entrepreneurship. So thank you very much for your time and your patience. And I'll invite Hani up. We can talk about some of these issues. Thank you very much.
Okay, hi Edward, welcome again to Manhattan University.
Thank you very much.
So I have 5 questions, then I recognize that they are long ones, so I'm sorry. So you did the Lawrence Field Center for Entrepreneurship at Baruch College for years, and I remember coming to the old building and visiting you for many, many times. And most of the people came there, they have this big dreams, but they don't have the budget for it. There is an old say that their early wins rarely come from what they own. They come from what they are able to unlock in terms of partnership, funding, and shared talent. Would you share with us your strategy of helping them to raise some funds, given how strict the market is?
Yeah, I think most aspiring entrepreneurs, can everyone hear me? It's okay? And social entrepreneurs think the first thing they need to do is raise a lot of money. And that's just wrong. First of all, it's almost impossible to raise a lot of money right in the beginning. Second of all, they don't really need a lot of money to get started. They need to create a strategy that has outreach and that creates momentum and interest in what they're doing. If they do that, the money will follow. And I really believe it, and I've seen it so many times. Don't get distracted on trying to raise money. Raising money is really hard. People don't just give you money because you're like a nice guy and you have a good idea, right? They're, really want to see something specific. They want to be able to measure the impact. They want to be able to boast to their families and friends about all the good things they've done. That's tough to get money from people, but figure out a way to get started in the cheapest, most efficient way possible, and the resources will follow. And I've seen that many times.
Thank you. Social entrepreneurship is mission first, not profit first.
Correct.
And you have two schools. One of them say that you will never get involved in any activities unless it serves the purpose of the organization. Another one say that social enterprise survive by pairing mission forward programs that lose money with revenue generated programs that subsidize them. How do you make this hard trade-off? Especially when you have time, when you face restricted funds.
Yeah. They have to accept that the mission is the most important part. And they have to come up with a strategy that allows them to serve the mission and to create a viable, sustainable organization. To get hung up on trying to create a profit-making strategy along with there is a difficult, and it's a distraction, and it takes you away from the mission. Social entrepreneurs are about the mission.
Can you combine them together? Like some projects provide money, other.
I think you definitely can combine them. I think it's great, and I've done it. But I think first things first, figure out a way to serve the mission, even in a small way, and build from there. When you look at these organizations, God's Love We Deliver, etc., they all started very small. They started with volunteers. They started with people donating food to them. Only after they proved the need and they proved the viability of their strategy did funding follow. And these organizations have become very big and they've raised a lot of money, but they didn't do that in the beginning.
Thank you. Measuring social impact goes far beyond counting how many people to ground reach. So output like number of participants, you can find it, but when it comes to how the project impact their social welfare, their life, it becomes a little bit more difficult to measure. So which impact metrics do you use to capture meaningful changes?
Yeah. In the very beginning, you can't create, there's no good system. First of all, you don't have a lot of numbers in the beginning. You start an organization, you're serving a handful of people, you're really just getting started, you don't have data. What do you have? You have stories. Stories are so powerful. Everybody's affected by stories, especially for social ventures. You tell the stories of the people you helped. I tell the story, I mentioned about being involved with the Hemophilia Association during the AIDS epidemic. I tell the story and actually raised money using this story because it's so powerful. It's the story of a family whose teenage son died of AIDS and they couldn't get a funeral home to take the body. Now, people here remember COVID. This was before COVID, and it was much more, in my opinion, much more frightening and much more deadly than COVID. Anyway, it was the job of the organization that I headed to help this family find a way to have a proper funeral for their son. I mean, what's more horrible than losing a child? What's more horrible than to watch somebody die of a terrible disease like this? But telling that story and said this was the mission of our organization to fill that gap helped us feel good about what we did, and it helped raise money from other philanthropic sources. So the power of stories, just one story, is enough to get going.
Social entrepreneurship often begins where traditional market repeatedly fail. And I saw some economic terms there. You talk about market failures, externality, information, asymmetry, and market uncertainty. Which one do you think is the most dangerous one when it comes to its impact on social entrepreneurship? And what potential roles do the government can adopt to reduce this type of externalities with type of imperfection without making even looks much worse?
Yeah, I have to say, I really think that the excess concentration of certain industries, and we're seeing that now, maybe more than we've seen it in a long time, the creation of monopolies, maybe some of these in, the technology space. I think these are really dangerous for the long run. In the long run, they stifle innovation. They end up overpricing their products and services. And it's really incumbent on the government to prevent this from happening. That's the reason antitrust laws exist. And we're seeing a time now when those maybe need to be reapplied to this new generation of businesses that are achieving too much power and preventing innovation and high levels of service to the public.
During your presentation, you mentioned a few entrepreneurial reflexes. So I'm going to mention the list of them, and then I'm going to ask you to pick the most important, the most critical one, an example of using it under pressure. Okay, ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Adaptability, resilience, resource optimizations, partnership building, data-driven decision making. I can repeat them.
No, it's okay. Resilience, without a doubt. Nothing ever goes to plan. I've written books on how to do plans. It's great. But I say in the books, write a plan. But then know that the next day you need to begin to revise that plan. The world changes. Things don't work out the way you expect. Some people get discouraged and they say, I can't do this. This is too tough. You can't take that attitude. You got to say, I got to roll with the punches. I got to figure out what's next. I need to be resilient. I need to find a new strategy. I need to move in another direction. And you see people who do that. Many successful entrepreneurs fit that pattern of, I'm trying to think of some examples. I'm going to give you, one example. Thomas Edison, right, who changed the world. He invented the light bulb. He invented the recording of sound. He invented motion pictures, and on and on and on. And if you go and visit his laboratory in Edison, New Jersey, the one thing you see is that he tried millions of ideas before he found the ones that worked. He never expected to come up with a clear, simple, direct answer and apply it right away. Everything had to be done over and over and over in different ways And, it's a long time ago, but that's the way the world works. It never goes according to your plan. And if you've got the resilience to try new things, eventually you'll find the right one.
Thank you. Now we open the floor for questions from the audience.
Thank you, Professor. How do students go about finding these opportunities? What are the initial steps that you might take to find social entrepreneurial opportunity?
So my experience with students is that they know what they want to work on. They know where they want to have impact. They know what problem exists in society that they want to help solve. So my advice to them is to go find an organization that's working on something like this and just start by volunteering for them. Get into that network, see what these people actually do, learn what works for them and what their frustrations have been. And as you do that, you'll come up with ideas for how you can do it better, and you will.
So, Edward, how do you prepare the students in academia? Or,
For social entrepreneurship?
Yes, it's part of our mission. How do you incorporate it there?
Yeah, I think it's a set of skills and tools like accounting, like finance, like engineering. And you can learn these skills and tools to be an entrepreneur in the private sector or to be a social entrepreneur. And, there's, now a lot written about it. There are many case studies on it that explain how other people have gone about it, what's worked for them, what hasn't worked for them. So I think it's really an education process like every other education process in your university.
Thank you for giving the talk. It's fantastic, so I appreciate listening in. The question I have is this. You've probably seen a lot of different examples of both for-profit and also not-for-profit, I guess social entrepreneurs. What would you say differentiates those two kinds of people?
Oh, entrepreneurs and social entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so, if I want to make, a gazillion dollars versus I'm very...
That's it, that's it.
Yeah, so, what makes them tick? What's the thing that makes them different, right?
What entrepreneurs want to make money. They say it right from the beginning. Students, people who have come to the Entrepreneurship Center, they say, I want to make money, and I see examples of billionaires out there who started as entrepreneurs. I want to be one of them, and I want to make money. Social entrepreneurs, they are obsessed with a problem they want to solve. And that's what they come and talk about. Where does money fit? It doesn't even come up in the conversation.
Thank you. And then sort of a secondary question to this is, if you're looking at all the different possible social entrepreneur companies that you have, and you have great examples up on the screen right now, is there one good case study that you would recommend in terms of looking at? Like if one was going to teach a course, as an example, is there a particular company that you think would be a great case study for this?
Well, that's a good question. I do teach courses in it, and I do use case studies. But I can't say that there's one that stands out. I don't know. I would say there's one that I'll tell you the story of this. So the reason New York has shelters for homeless people is because an NYU law student used to jog in Washington Square Park every morning and he saw all these homeless people who slept on the benches. And he said to himself, why are these people sleeping on benches? Why don't they have someplace to go? And he started talking to them and learning what their issues were. Well, one of their issues were that they had no place to go. And so he said, that's incredible that we let these people just, all weather, all conditions, spend their lives in Washington Square Park and sleep on the benches and, be subject to crimes and all kinds of issues. And so he went and did some legal research, and he found that the New York State Constitution has in it that everyone has a right to shelter. Who knew that? I didn't know it. Does anyone here know that? And he said, oh my God, there's a right to shelter in New York State. He sued the state of New York and said, you're not providing shelter. And here's the New York State Constitution that says these people have a right to shelter. Well, the mayor of New York he won the lawsuit. The court ordered the city of New York to organize shelters. The mayor did not like this guy. He organized a nonprofit called Coalition for the Homeless, which still exists. New York City now has 100,000 beds that can be occupied by homeless people every night. And this guy started this. And that's all it was. He went and he spoke to the people who it affected most. He learned what their needs were. He used his skill as a law student to find this opportunity, and he made it work. I think it's a fantastic story. He now runs a health charity, and I have him come to my classes and tell his story. He's a humble, nice, wonderful guy. But I think it's, just a fantastic story of everything sort of aligned for that to happen. And he ended up having a huge impact, obviously.
Thank you for that. I
Sure.
learned something new today. Appreciate it.
Sure. Okay.
Hello. During your presentation, you talked about making plans and how sometimes those plans have to change the next day. And I was wondering if you had any advice on how to change plans when challenges arise.
Change plans when?
When challenges arise. So how do you keep it open? How do you make plans flexible while keeping in mind that the next day they may need to make changes to the plan?
Yeah. Before you get started, you need to understand that your plan is only good for a short period of time. You really need people. I've met so many people who create a plan, have an idea, and they're so certain this is the right way to do it. And of course, they end up changing their plans. But if you understand right from the beginning that you need to have this flexibility, that you're gonna learn things that are gonna change what you do, you can cope with it. But that's part of the learning process, is to meet people, read case studies, and see that you need to be flexible.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Anyone else have any questions?
At Manhattan University, we have an entrepreneurship center, and then at the O'Malley School of Business, we have an innovation challenge where business students, engineering students, science students compete every year. They present their business ideas, they compete for cash prizes. And now that I'm thinking, some of those ideas that were presented in the last couple of years, they do fall under the category of social entrepreneurship. There were some medical devices ideas, or sustainable products like the sustainable air filter, etc. Some of those ideas did lead to successful business ideas. Not surprisingly, many of them did not. What should the focus of student entrepreneur be if they have such ideas, if they want to be successful in the future, both economically and also serve the community? We do have a entrepreneurship course offered at the management, by the management department as well. So what should our focus be? What should the students focus?
Yeah, I think it's really two separate streams. I teach entrepreneurship and I teach social entrepreneurship, and I really believe they're very different, in large part because the students they attract are very different. I think it's hard to mix them. I think it's hard to mix them in an entrepreneurship center. Certainly the entrepreneurship center I ran really only did business things. So I think it's really two separate streams, very different from each other. Yeah.
Is there something in the middle, like Porter and Kramer's idea of creating shared value? I think that's what our colleague was speaking to, where the idea itself is one that does have greater stakeholder benefit in mind. It's not just about profit, but it's about creating wider value for a broader group of stakeholders.
Yeah. To be candid, it doesn't work for me. So I think, I think there's a values component to being an entrepreneur, of being responsible, right? Being socially responsible, knowing who your stakeholders are, being responsible to the community, meeting the needs of your employees, meeting the needs of your customers in a broad way. I think all that's, absolutely fine. But I think if you lose focus on what your main objective is, which for an entrepreneur is to make money, create a product or service and make money with it. If you lose focus with that, being socially responsible is great, but becoming a social venture at the same time, I think is antithetical to what they're trying to do. I wish it weren't that way, but it is.
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Professor, for being here with us tonight. I really enjoyed your presentation, especially social entrepreneurship. Wasn't a topic I thought a lot about, so I really gained a lot of insights from that. Earlier in your lecture, I know you mentioned the triple bottom line, how successful social entrepreneurs have to achieve all three of those factors: profit, people, planet. So I was just curious, what are some strategies that a social entrepreneur that wants to execute a new venture, how can they achieve all three of those? And what are some potential challenges and obstacles that they could face?
Yeah, it's a great question. A lot of obstacles. So what happens, at least what I've seen, is that they create a plan for what they call a social venture. But when you look at it, it's not achieving all three of those. This is a time to go back to the drawing board. Do you want to be a social entrepreneur? Do you want to serve the needs of people? Do you want to be a positive influence on the planet? Do you want to serve your community? Do you really want to do all these things? Well, what you've just designed doesn't do most of them. It only does this. So you need to go back and think about how you're going to revise what you're doing, which of course they're happy to do.
Any other questions?
You mentioned earlier in the lecture how the government is limiting the amount of doctors that can be produced. Do you think the same should be done for entrepreneurs? Especially when we consider how many fail and how many don't do the right thing. Do you think it would be wise to limit them as we incorporate entrepreneurship more into academia?
Yeah, it's a great idea. It doesn't, I don't think it translates into reality. I mean, you need to be licensed as a doctor to practice, to write prescriptions, to see patients in a hospital. You need to have a license. There's no license for business people. There's no license for social entrepreneurs. So I don't know how government would limit them other than like we would create licenses for entrepreneurs and limit them. So I think the broader the supply of entrepreneurs, especially the broader the supply of social entrepreneurs, the better.
Anyone else? Any comments? Oh, perfect.
So Professor, I just heard you say that the more entrepreneurs, the better. And I was just curious as to why you think that way.
I think entrepreneurs deliver value to the world. Just forget about social entrepreneurs for a minute. I think entrepreneurs, they innovate, they create new businesses, they generate economic impact, they move society forward in technology and in other areas as well. So I think they serve a real purpose for society. That's why I say I think the more the better. I think the more schools do to create more people who are interested in following that path. By the way, as much as I say, you all should become social entrepreneurs or even entrepreneurs, the reality is that the older a person is, the more likely they are to be an entrepreneur. So it's, you graduate from school, more likely to get a job, more likely to pay off your loans, more likely to start a family, more likely to follow a certain path. And then later on in your career, as you learn more, as you expand your network, as you develop ideas, the more likely you are to become an entrepreneur and the more likely you are to be successful. So you can be patient. You don't have to graduate from school in May and become an entrepreneur in June. You can wait till you're 50.
Any other questions on that very light note? Comments?
Okay, so as we bring the Gorganos program to a close, I would like to express my deep thanks to Edward. I know Edward for a long time, more than 25 years ago, when I finished my PhD, and I went to Baruch College, and he was one of the professors there, and we worked together. My first publication was with Edward a long time ago. And I would like also to thank our audience for spending part of their valuable time with us this evening, and thank you all.